a $1.9 trillion COVID relief plan, a $1.8 trillion education plan, a $2.3 infrastructure plan. Last year, I think we spent $4 trillion on COVID relief. As Everett Dirksen would say, a trillion here, a trillion there. After a while, it adds up to real money. Very popular, but those numbers, can those numbers be matched by closing loopholes in corporations and taxing the wealthiest Americans?
Actually, I think, Joe, Everett Dirksen said $1 billion here, $1 billion there, and now
right.
we're up to $1 trillion here, $1 trillion there. That's how the world has moved on in the last 40 or 50 years. Look, I think there's two issues here. One, on the revenue side, can it be covered by revenues? Theoretically, it can be. Even the president's proposal would take, in the case of the American Jobs Plan, 15 years of revenues to pay for 8 years of expenses. So it's not quite apples to apples there. And already the tax increases are being negotiated down. The corporate tax rate will probably not go all the way to 28. It'll go to 25. The increases in taxes in this bill are going to be popular, but I don't know, and certainly increasing capital gains rates toward ordinary income will be popular. I don't think it'll get all the way to the 42 or 43% that the president's proposing. So there probably will be a gap between the revenues and the expenses. But what I really worry about is the size and magnitude about this. You guys have talked very eloquently about the sweep, the transformation, the support for this. We had 50 years of small government under, robust government under FDR. We had 40 years of relatively small government, and now we're back to a robust government. And if you look at this chart, Joe, you can take the numbers you were just talking about and see it all put together. You can see the $1.9 trillion from the rescue plan, $2.25 trillion from the jobs plan, now another $1.8 trillion. So it's $6 trillion in addition, as you pointed out, to last year. And just to put this into some perspective, what you can see all the way over on the right is the Obama stimulus plan, which was $800 billion. So you're talking about something like 7 times the size of that. And you're talking about comparing it to $4.4 trillion a year that the government spends on everything. This is over a longer period of time, in fairness. It includes some tax credits, in fairness. But you're talking about almost 50% more than the government spends just in 1 year, just on its normal activities. And what I worry about, sure, I worry about inflation. Sure, I worry about the deficit and the debt. But I also worry about the execution job here. I mean, this is a massive execution job. The last plan, the jobs plan alone, had 76 separate initiatives in it. All have to be created and executed. President Obama's plan got a lot of criticism for some very, very small mistakes. The potential for mistakes, failure of execution here is high. And if it fails, I think it will set back the cause of progressivism for several more decades. So getting it proposed is important. Getting it passed will be hard, as you guys were just talking about. But getting it executed, I think, in some ways is going to be the president's biggest challenge. He's got to deliver not just passage, but actual real results for Americans and programs that people perceive are working, or else we go back to government being the enemy again.
Well, and Willie, we certainly, whatever happens here, whether it's executed well or not, you will have a government that will have little money to spend on new projects in years to come. That's why it's going to be so fascinating to see how the compromises break out, how much these massive spending bills proposals are moderated. But on the other side of that, Steve is worrying about progressives. If they spend this money and don't execute well, it sets back the progressive cause for a generation. I'm concerned about conservatism. The fact that, again, as I've said on the show for 4 years, 5 years, that conservatives were setting themselves up for the fall, setting themselves up exactly for this moment, because they completely abandoned their small government conservative principles. And now they forget about talking about the numbers. In the past, Republicans would be digging through the bills, debating policy. Now they're reduced to talking about Mr. Potato Head, cancel culture, Major League Baseball, Dr. Seuss.
With no credibility on spending.
With absolutely no credibility on spending, and they don't have a speaker, unlike Paul Ryan. They don't have a speaker who can at least talk about policy. They don't have a majority leader or a minority leader in the House that can talk about that. Instead, he reads Dr. Seuss books on the same day that one of the most sweeping relief bills ever are passed.
Yeah, the central attack on the speech last night that we heard afterward from most Republicans was that this was a socialist agenda, that it's too much government, they're spending too much money, which, as you point out, rings hollow given their record over the last several years. Mitt Romney said, boy, $6 trillion. Bernie Sanders is going to love that. And Bernie Sanders, in fact, did come out and say how much he loved that, and he looked forward to getting right to work on